5, we slept in cow hides and sheepskins. But tonight is not going to be a story about how I grew up in poverty. At 11, Dad had a really terrible accident and he broke his skull. This story will not be about that accident, even though it was extremely pivotal, because so many strangers came and they rescued Dad from the accident scene. They took him to Kipchumba Hospital, the place where I was born, and then subsequent from Kipchumba Hospital to Moi Referral, and then to Nairobi Hospital. But today will not be about that. I relied on scholarship through high school, undergraduate, and postgraduate. This is part of information that I shared last year in a tweet that ended up going viral. But the rest of it reads as follows. We lose money in our pig farm. In 2012, Dad passes away to cancer, which is multiple myeloma. And then we lose even more money during COVID. In 2016, we had nearly, we had so much unpaid bills, pending bills, that nearly sank our company. And then in 2012, I lost in UDA primaries. And then in 2023, the most public failure, having ran for Senate in Elgeyo Marakwet County. And you will lose some, you will fail sometimes. You will be anxious, but be hopeful. I'm Team Kipchumba. So back to relying on scholarship. I'd done so well in primary school. And I went to Chebara. Chebara is the place that supplies water to the entire Eldoret town. And I remember, going with Dad, leaving Chebara Center, going to high school with those steel metal boxes. And in Chebara, Dad had this idea that if he just consistently told us, even if we don't have pocket money, we just drink water and eat kitheri, we'll be fine. And I go to Chebara, there, on the final year, there's a lady that comes to school. She's called Penina. And we were still young and impressionable. I was still young and impressionable. And Penina comes to us in Form 4. Let me tell you who Penina is. She's got a first class honors, and she's expecting to go for a master's. And we hadn't seen ladies that successful in Marakwet. Not to say, I'll tell you more. And so just to see Penina, stand in front of our class and speak about our dreams and speak about our own dreams, speak about the story of Ben Carson, tell us a little bit about what life could be if we could dream a little bit bigger. She helped me connect again. What Dad always kept saying, you don't have a lot in the way of material things. You don't have a lot in land. You are relying on World Vision scholarship. That year for the first time, I got additional impetus because of that encounter with Penina. And for the first year, for the first time in the history of the school, we sent the highest number of students to the university. And I was one of those that ended up getting an A-. And so I finished. And so the journey now, the wait begins, 18 months typically. And immediately I finish high school, I begin a job. I get an immediate job. I joined the family business as a livestock management trainee. No, man. It's a proper management job, you wake up in the morning, you graze the cows, there is planning, there is negotiating, there is. But I think the most exciting part about being a livestock management trainee, or commonly arts boy, two things were really fun. One is that I had plenty of time. I just read so many books. It's unbelievable that you can be poor and never even know you're poor. You can be from a very humble background, but you're always constantly dreaming of a world that is possible. And I really thank Kapswar Hospital because they had this library. And every other Sunday, I would go there to pick a book. And I just kept dreaming. Like it was as if I was in this bubble that was just unbelievable. But the other thing that was fun about being a livestock management trainee was probably the most exciting was the evening wandering to the center. In my case, Center 1, Center 2 in Sambirir in Marakwet East. That evening wandering to the center after the cows have been fully grazed was always fantastic because it was like the day has ended. Now you have like an hour or two you're going to the center. So in that moment, I met a gentleman called Arnold. Arnold, was from Cumberland. I had never seen anyone outside Marakwet. So he had fascinating stories. He was brown. He was not as dark as me. Because right now, if it weren't for these lights, would have to rely on the teeth. So over time, what I've realized is if you are as dark as I am, the trick is very simple. Just smile. You will be fine. Arnold had exciting stories. And so we build this close relationship. And then one day, he comes back home. I meet him at the center, and he's carrying a 3-day-old newspaper. The section that I ended up reading was actually an invitation to apply for a scholarship to Strathmore University. So I had gotten, of course, an A-, and I was like, oh my goodness, I meet the requirements. I meet the requirements. The only thing is that they want me to write an essay. I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm just going to write that essay very quickly. And so I put my heart and soul to it. I write the essay, and I sent it out. I went about with, adding the cows and doing whatever I need to do back at home. But then a couple of days later, a friend of mine, Timothy, comes back home from Nairobi. I had used Timothy's number, and Timothy was the son of Reverend Joseph. So it was the equivalent of dynasty those days. So I had used his cell phone number because there was absolutely no way Strathmore would have reached me anyway. Who had even heard of Strathmore? I would have been called to BCom at University of Nairobi. Then there is this thing called Strathmore, and Strathmore say you are invited for an interview in Nairobi. You remember that familiar trip with dad and metal boxes? Now we come back to Nairobi for the first time. And oh my goodness, we arrive at that green building in the evening. Avia Center, that one? I'm like, oh my goodness. That building is a good marker, by the way, for the city. If you come back from the village, that's a really important thing. And so we end up getting a room in Vankano, some Vankano Lodge. I'm actually considering taking my wife there sometime. And so anyway, we navigate our way. We get to Strathmore University. And oh my goodness, fantastic place. Magnificent. I'd never seen anything like that. And I sit on the oral interview, I sit on the math, I sit on the English aptitude test, and then I pass. I'm now a student who is going to be studying business information technology. So it was a merger between IT and computer science. But the shock that would await me was just unbelievable. I came to Strathmore wearing green trousers for the first time in class. Green trousers, red, yellow flowered shirt, and a yellow jacket. And then, the girls in the class, all of them except one, I think it must have been Millicent, were all wearing trousers. I was super scandalized. In Elgeyo Marakwet County, the only girls those days that would wear trousers were the girls that used to work in a pub or in a bar. Like it was almost an abomination. And then it never stops there. I'm in a small group discussion and people are announcing, I'm going to the toilet. I'm like, oh my goodness, how can you possibly, like why would you even say that? Like, isn't that like private? Man, like Strathmore was something. I'm not Catholic, but I used to go to the chapel and say, God, please help me, Help me fit. Like where did you bring me? And for the entire semester, I really struggled to fit. Forget even being poor now. It's like Kalenjin accent, my green trouser, everything. But very quickly, I realized I could fit if I did two things. If I learned calculus and integral functions. Because at the end of the first term, I came top of the class. And now I'm like, oh my goodness, this Nairobi kid's got nothing on me. and so, and so instead of using that to be like proud, I realized, oh my goodness, I might actually use that to like, make friends. So people would struggle with calculus, I would teach them. But then you remember the story of Penina? I'm like, oh yeah, maybe I should consider actually running to be class president. Oh my goodness, that was a big mistake. Because I didn't realize politics is about appeal. And now with my green trouser, with a turn-up, with my AV Kalenjin accent, I wasn't going to make it to the class. So anyway, I ended up getting 26 votes out of about 90. Of course, there was no need to open the servers, honestly. And I would abandon elective politics for 20 years. But even amid all that cultural shock in Strathmore University, Strathmore is a place where I met Victoria, who taught me to press Alt-Control-Delete for the first time and use the computer. Strathmore also ended up being the place where I met David. David took me for my first movie. It's called The Munich. Some of you may know. Then Liz gave me my first job, a small gig installing software at a company, and then she bought me my first pizza. And Strathmore is a place where I meet Rosemary. We ended up writing 2 books together. Strathmore is a place I met George and Robinson, who ended up becoming my best man. But life in Strathmore was tough because I had a girlfriend at the time, my childhood crush, college girlfriend, and she was outside Nairobi. She's somewhere in the audience. She was in Nakuru. And I quickly realized, oh my goodness, if I could actually retain being the top student in the class, there was a small loophole inside Strathmore where they give you 10% of the school fees. I'm like, 25,000 is enough to sustain the relationship. So Strathmore, I'm very happy for you because that 25,000 they would give me at the end of the year. They even forgot that I never paid school fees. I was a scholarship student, so they sent me 25,000. And I would take the money, faithfully go to Nakuru, meet my girlfriend. And for 3 years, I did that. On the final year, very broke in the middle of a semester, super broke, because Dad would give me 3,000 bob to last me through the whole semester. There was absolutely no way. So I always skipped lunch. All my lunches I skipped. But then I go to the newspaper, to the notice board, and then there is an invitation to write an essay, and you would get $100. $100 at the time was 7,500 bob. I'm like, oh my goodness, that's my chance. I'm going to get that $100. Within 3 days, I research. I'm a technology student, but within 3 days, I was an expert in, using private sector strategies to conserve wildlife. I leave Strathmore. The gentleman that marks that essay is a gentleman called Raul. He loves the essay, he loves my energy, you know what. And he ends up offering me a job to work at the university. But it was a very difficult time. But I had to decide whether I would go to a top consulting company or I could stay in Strathmore University. So I had to accept a pay cut in Strathmore University because, it promised that, I could work in the place where they were impactful for me. So I did that for 3 years. That encounter with Raul ended up becoming an interesting encounter because we ended up spinning a company called Questworks, where I'm a co-founder and a CFO at. And that company has gone on to win multiple awards. Most sustainable buildings in the country. We've ended up doing more than 200 megawatts of solar, more than 1,000 acres of solar. And it was only because of an encounter that happened almost accidentally that came out of an essay. Because my friends kept laughing at my accent, I swore at that time that I will take them back home to Marakwet in order to create an encounter that would not be an accidental, like the one for Penina, that would be a meaningful encounter. And that ended up becoming the seed of a program that we run now called Mentorship, which is Mentorship Marathon, getting folks like you, instead of relying on luck to have someone like Penina, who was a stranger to me, become impactful, we design luck. I've been very, very, very fortunate. Fortunate that even though I grew up poor and not in the way of material needs, I was fortunate to actually have parents that truly loved me. I actually realize now, looking back, that poverty, the antidote to poverty is love. I was also extremely fortunate to marry my high school girlfriend and college sweetheart. I was fortunate. But as I am fortunate for those things, I am even more fortunate and grateful for the graces and the luck and the series of encounters with strangers that have made a huge difference in my life. Strangers like Penina, people like Arnold, that I've never met. Arnold, if you please hear this, kindly reach out. So many people that have ended up becoming my best man, people that have ended up becoming partners, people that have ended up playing meaningful role in my life. And so sometimes, just sometimes, you are a stranger to someone, but what kind of a stranger are you? What have strangers done for you? What could we do together when you meet strangers? How can we turn moments with strangers to be moments of love and meaningful encounter? Thank you.